Welcome to Remedy and Rhyme, where the voices of poetry and plants entwine, offering nourishment for the spirit and a gentle return to the heart of nature. I'm your host, Kimberly Kling of Joyful Roots, clinical and community herbalist. I'm so glad you've joined me here to share in the stories, reflections, and simple ways these green allies can nurture our everyday lives. This podcast is for educational and inspirational purposes only. I'm not a medical doctor or a licensed health professional, and nothing shared here is intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. The information provided has not been evaluated by the FDA. Herbs are powerful allies, but not without personality. If you experience an allergic reaction or discomfort from any herb mentioned, please stop using it. Also, if you're taking medications, check with your doctor about potential herb-drug interactions. Most importantly, you and you alone are the steward of your own body. What you choose to consume, apply, or integrate is entirely up to you. This is about health empowerment, listen with curiosity, and always honor your own body's wisdom. These episodes are dropped the first Wednesday of every month, and to go along with this podcast, I have a Patreon community where you can join me to explore these plants deeper. Find that at patreon.com/joyfulroots. Hello and welcome to Remedy and Rhyme. I am so glad that you joined me this month, and we are going to be speaking this month all about our friend, the ever so trustworthy and steadfast Dandelion. So, as we always do, let's start this episode with a poem. This poem is by me and it's called Well-Worn Love. In the corner of the spare room, paint chipping like it's begging forgiveness, I'm hugging this old Afghan, surely hooked with a hefty dose of patience and the hope that someday someone will love it like she does. Back in the alleyway, dusty like the closet of old knits, sleepy eyes travel every day, overlooked by cracking walls, wild lettuce, sow thistle, morning glory vine stretching third eye violet to the sky, above the shallow ruts where water meets tires and footprints again and again. Patience and time and patience. Dainty yellow flowers peek from lioness leaves, growth from reliably trodden paths and crumbling stucco. Oh, dandelions, do you know you feed my tender heartache, born from humdrum places, as you feed the bees, caring for them and me with well-worn love? Dandelion is one of the most misunderstood plants we know. It's been labeled a weed, an invader, a nuisance, something that needs to be eradicated rather than understood. Entire industries have been built around its removal, convincing us that a uniform, obedient lawn is more valuable than a living, breathing ecosystem. We've been taught that order looks like control and that beauty means sameness, and so season after season, dandelion becomes this terrible enemy. It's sprayed, it's pulled out, it's cursed at, simply for growing where it's not supposed to. But what does that say about a culture when one of the most generous, nourishing, and adaptable plants is treated as disposable or a pest? When something that's so willing to offer itself, its roots, its leaves, its flowers, its very presence, is dismissed because it refuses to conform. It refuses to conform to this idea of purity and perfection, of cleanliness and sameness. Dandelion doesn't fit neatly into our ideas of usefulness because it can't be owned, branded, or easily commodified. It grows freely. It spreads itself without permission. It thrives beyond the fences and the property lines, and for that, it's punished. There's something very deeply familiar to this story. Dandelion carries the imprint of those who have been overlooked, undervalued, or pushed to the margins. Yet, they continue to show up anyway. It knows what it is to be relied upon quietly, while being publicly scorned at the same time. It's a plant equivalent of well-worn love, the kind that has been used, ignored, stepped over, yet still remains faithful to its purpose. And yet, despite all of this, Dandelion arrives each spring, radiant and unapologetic. Golden faces that lift toward the sun offer their nectar when very little else is blooming. It doesn't shrink itself to be palatable. It doesn't ask for permission to exist. It simply continues doing its job, loosening compacted soil, feeding so many pollinators, nourishing bodies, including human bodies, and restoring balance wherever it finds an opening. To love Dandelion is to question what we've been taught to value. It asks us to reconsider who and what we dismiss too quickly. It invites us into a different kind of relationship with the land, one that isn't rooted in domination, but in reciprocity. And maybe that's why Dandelion feels like such an important teacher right now. Because in a world that is so obsessed with control and perfection and even compliance, it offers us something far more sustaining. It offers resilience, generosity, and a love that has been worn smooth by time, but never worn out. Dandelion is that kind of love that doesn't try to impress you. It doesn't arrive with a bunch of ceremony or rarity or a high price tag. It shows up through cracks in the sidewalk, along fences, in lawns we keep trying to tame. It is the love that has been stepped on, overlooked, sprayed, dismissed, and still keeps returning again and again. And there's something kind of deeply comforting about a plant that knows it belongs no matter how many times it's told it doesn't. This is well-worn love, the kind built through repetition, resilience, and quiet usefulness. The kind of love that feeds you and supports you and asks nothing in return but your willingness to notice it. Dandelion doesn't shout about its gifts. It doesn't shout to the world. It just offers them, leaf, root, flower, stem, each part doing a small, faithful work. It reminds us that abundance doesn't have to be curated or exclusive, and that sometimes it looks like a plant that's growing wherever it's needed most. There's also a tenderness here. Many of us remember Dandelion as children, blowing wishes into the wind and trusting that something unseen would carry them. That trust is part of Dandelion's story too. It spreads itself freely, not really controlling where it lands. It teaches us about letting go, about dispersal, about love that isn't clingy. Dandelion and so many other plants just believe that the nourishment will find its way where it's meant to go. And maybe that's another reason why Dandelion feels so especially resonant in this moment. In a time where so many of us are exhausted, we feel extracted from, and we feel this constant need to be over polished because so much of us lives online, at least for many of us. But Dandelion is offering a different model. It's a model that's rooted in persistence and mutual care and shared nourishment. This is like a love that improves the soil simply by being present. One that feeds the bees by just showing up when it's needed and not doing anything beyond what it is meant to do and who it is. It's that well-worn kind of love, like we talked about, that's persistent, that says, I will keep staying, I will help you through the hard times with my quiet fortitude, my steadfast presence, and just being there for you so that when you feel ready, you can shine again. There isn't really some grand myth about Dandelion that I was able to find that's passed down from a civilization or a culture, and that kind of tells us something. Dandelion stories are lived in the kitchens and the fields and the hands of little children, not in the libraries. Its mythology is like itself. It's practical, it's seasonal, it's sort of mundane, for lack of a better word, it's a plant that's woven into daily life so thoroughly that it doesn't really need a legend to justify its value. However, there are many myths which speak to this well-worn and consistent love that we just talked about. The quiet and consistent love of Bacchus and Philemon in Greek mythology, the cyclical and returning love of Inanna and Dumuzi in Sumerian mythology, the aging and imperfect love of Sarah and Abraham in the Bible. And today I'd like to share the myth of Osiris and Isis from Egyptian mythology. In the old Egyptian stories, Osiris was a good king, one who taught the people how to live in harmony with the land, how to tend crops, how to keep the cycles of life moving. And Isis was his partner, his equal, not merely his wife, but his mirror, a magic holder, protector, and knower of names. But Osiris was betrayed. His brother Set, driven by jealousy, murdered him and scattered his body across the land. He was dismembered, separated, made impossible to return as he once was. And this is where the love story truly begins. Isis doesn't collapse into despair. Instead, she begins to walk and walk and walk and not turn away from what's been broken. She travels the length of Egypt, marsh by marsh, riverbed by riverbed, searching for the pieces of Osiris, and one by one she finds them. All of them. She gathers what's been scattered. She wraps each fragment with care, with ritual, and with presence. This is the kind of love that doesn't deny death. It enters it. It enters the dark unknown in the service of the other. Isis knows she can't restore Osiris to the world of the living in the way that he once belonged to, so she does something even wiser. She changes the question. Rather than asking, how do I bring him back? She asks, how do I tend to what remains? Through her devotion, her magic, her persistence, Osiris is transformed. He's not really returned as he was, but he's remembered. He becomes Lord of the Underworld, Keeper of the Dead, Guardian of regeneration and renewal. Life doesn't end with death, it just changes form. And from this devotion, from this fierce refusal to abandon what was lost, new life emerges. This love between Isis and Osiris isn't really romantic in the modern sense, because it's not about being rescued or swept off your feet like we often see in the romantic movies. It's about staying, even in death. It's about gathering what's been torn apart and lovingly trying to mend it. Just like Dandelion, it's about tending to what can still be tended to with persistency and doing it imperfectly. It reminds us that love doesn't always restore things to how they were. Sometimes love gives us the courage to carry what remains, and in doing so, to create something entirely new. This is love as ritual, and love as the long work of care. So, how does the well-worn love of Dandelion move from an idea to our hands, to our daily life? Dandelion is a bitter herb, and that bitterness is a language that the body recognizes immediately. When we taste the bitter flavor, the body responds. We have bitter receptors all over, and especially on our tongue, in the back of our mouth. And saliva increases, digestive juices begin to flow, and the nervous system receives a quiet message to pay attention. It's like this message that nourishment is on its way. Bitterness wakes up the pathways that modern life tends to dull through our over addiction to sweetness, over processing of food, and constant stimulation. It reminds the body how to prepare, how to receive, and how to move things along rather than hold on to them too tightly. Dandelion root has also long been worked with as a companion for the liver. It doesn't really force the liver to do more, but it supports its natural rhythm. Its bitterness encourages bile flow, helping fats and waste to move rather than accumulate. And this is why people often associate dandelion with feelings of lightness, regularity, internal circulation, not because it was necessarily cleansing the body, but because movement was restored. In that sense, the liver is sort of a worker of thresholds, and it sort of transforms and packages in order for the body to better be able to release. It decides what gets to stay, what moves on, and what needs to be let go of. And when life becomes heavy, whether that means chemically, emotionally, or culturally, those pathways can feel sort of slowed and burdened and stagnant. That's where dandelion can be such a huge ally, because dandelion's work is to loosen what's become stuck and stagnant and compacted, kind of like the way that it works in the soil. That mirrors what it's doing inside our own bodies. It's helping things that have become stagnant and compacted to move again so that life can move freely. Emotionally, the liver also represents the place where frustration, resentment, and anger or unexpressed emotion can linger. And when bitterness is missing from the diet, it's not uncommon for people to feel stuck, irritable, heavy, inflamed, emotionally inflamed inside and out. Dandelion offers a gentle reintroduction to bitterness as medicine for discernment. And it teaches the body how to process not just food, but experiences. It helps us to take in what's nourishing and release what no longer belongs. There are two main ways that people typically work with dandelion. It's either the roots or the leaves, although flowers have their own benefit. The roots work slowly and deeply and ask for time. Some of the most common preparations that we might use for the roots include a decoction, which is when you gently simmer chopped or dried roots for about 20 minutes and then strain, and you have a liquid left over that you can use on its own or in other recipes. Or a lot of people will drink roasted dandelion root tea, and this is sort of a coffee alternative. It tastes very similar to coffee, and the roots are roasted until they're fragrant and dark and then brewed. And another way that someone might use the roots are through a tincture, either fresh or dried root tincture steeped over at least several weeks. Preparing the root is kind of a physical work. You have to dig them up, scrub the soil from all of the cracks and crevices in the roots, and then chop them up. And it's quite relationship forming. It requires time, and it's sort of similar to how dandelion works. Root preparations are usually taken daily in small amounts as a way of supporting a steady internal flow, rather than creating some big dramatic change. Now, when we use the leaves, we're incorporating some different elements. The leaves are a bit more bitter, whereas the roots have a little bit more sweetness to them. They're usually used fresh, and they create even more movement because of the increased bitter flavor. They're pretty immediate and responsive, and they speak quickly to the body. Some common preparations that we might use for the leaves are an infusion, either fresh or dried leaves that are steeped briefly instead of simmered. And we might also use them in food. I've seen people make pesto with them. You could saute them. They're really great sauteed with garlic and olive oil. Put them in soups or salads. And some people make them into vinegars, infused vinegars, or even glycerites, which I've never done, but the vinegar is good at capturing minerals and bitterness. The bitterness of the leaves is the most noticeable aspect, really, I think, and that's signaling to the digestive system to stimulate the appetite, stimulate salivation, and to stimulate movement. And leaf preparations are often worked with seasonally, usually in the spring when dandelions are growing abundantly, and the body is naturally inclined towards circulation and release. The flowers are also a beautiful way to work with dandelion. They're more ephemeral. They're meant to be gathered when they're fresh and used pretty quickly. Some common ways to use the flowers are by infusing them in honey, which captures that solar warmth, and it's kind of like adding a nectar to the honey. We can also dry them and use them in oil infusions for the skin and for gentle daily care. The flowers are known to be helpful for aches and pains through the body, and they're pretty gentle. One little note I'd like to add here is that pay attention when you're gathering dandelion flowers to what's going on in the environment around you and how many are available, because although dandelions are often looked at as a nuisance, the bees do really rely on them in the spring, and so they're often in abundance, but if you see that they are not in abundance, you might want to leave the flowers for the bees. Also, anytime you gather any herb, especially dandelion, make sure that the area that you're gathering from hasn't been sprayed with herbicides or pesticides. I'd like to end this with a few cautions and considerations. Bitterness can be too much for some bodies at certain times, so if you're feeling very depleted, dry, or sensitive, you might find that strong bitter preparations are a little bit too much. And digestive sensitivity matters. Dandelion encourages bile flow and digestive movement, so for some, this feels relieving, but for others, it might be too reactive. If you have gallstones, bile duct obstruction, or known gallbladder conditions, you should approach dandelion with a lot of care and preferably some professional guidance. Some people are allergic to plants in the Asteraceae family, which includes dandelion, so be careful if you have any known sensitivities to plants in that family. And just be aware if you're on medications that dandelion does interact with the fluid balance and digestive process in the body, so people, especially on diuretics or other medications that might affect the liver or gallbladder, should consult a knowledgeable practitioner before working with dandelion. Dandelion offers us a well-worn love, not careless love. It's love that's learned the value of boundaries, timing, and respect. Love that knows when to push through concrete and when to soften the soil instead. It's a love that understands that care works best when it's mutual, and that resilience isn't about endless giving, but about staying in relationship, season after season, without losing oneself in the process. So here's where we end the podcast with some reflection or journal questions that you can ask yourself. Here's what I'd like for you to think about. Who or what in your life offers quiet, faithful support without recognition? Where do you feel movement and ease in your body right now? And where do you feel stuck, heavy, or compacted? What are you holding on to that's asking to be processed, transformed, or released? And what does bitterness teach you about discernment, about knowing what nourishes you and what does not? Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope to see you on the next episode. I am so excited to keep sharing the wisdom of plants and poetry with all of you. If you enjoy this journey and would like to help support this podcast, whether energetically, financially, or just by sharing it with a friend, I would be so grateful. Your support helps to keep this space alive, allows me to continue exploring new herbs, crafting new episodes, and sharing inspiration with you. One of the easiest ways to support this podcast is to rate and review it in your favorite podcast app. You can also join our Remedy and Rhyme Patreon page, which is available at patreon.com/joyfulroots. You'll find all sorts of goodies there, including plant stories, recipes, and more. There is a free membership, but if you are able to help support the podcast, there are some great perks with the paid memberships. And also, I have a shop on Patreon where you can easily purchase educational material like a class or a zine and further your own herbal knowledge. Another way that you can support the podcast is by getting yourself some of the most amazing matcha on the planet. It's Posana Matcha. It's certified, organic, third-party tested to ensure that it's free of heavy metals, pure, safe, and absolutely delicious. This is the matcha that I always turn to because I know it's the highest quality and I just love it so much. So I'm excited that I can offer everybody that listens to this podcast 15% off if you use the coupon code JoyfulRoots. You can find the link in the show notes or head to posana.net, that's posana.net, and use the coupon code JoyfulRoots at checkout. Although I love sharing my poetry with you, I really would love to make this a community collaborative effort. So don't be shy. Feel free to send some poetry in my way. And I'm going to keep a running list of plants that I'd like to talk about in the future. You can find that list on my website at joyfulroots.com/plantpoems. That's PLANTPOEMS. Thank you to Ikun Baradine for their music, Bedtime After Coffee, which was in the intro and outro, and also to Lights by Sakura Girl, and Asher Fulero for Exploring the Crystal Caves, which was the music you heard in the middle of the podcast. And thank you so much to the plants #1, the greatest of all herbal teachers, to all of the herbalists that I've learned from. There's just too many to name. And for all of my family and friends for supporting me on this podcast journey. And to all of my amazing patrons and customers and clients, this really wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you again.